generally sits outside medicine, but I got really interested in this field, cannabis, which really came out of side of medicine at the beginning, and really medicine is now catching up to that. Same with psychedelics. People have been using psychedelics to expand their brain, and now we're finding so many other uses.
Welcome to the Peptides and Longevity podcast. Each week, we'll dive into groundbreaking science, innovative therapies, and the future of health and longevity. Alongside visionary physicians and experts, we'll explore how peptides, cutting-edge medicine, and lifestyle strategies can redefine the way we age. Get ready to transform your health, optimize your vitality, and unlock the secrets to a longer, healthier life. Let's get started.
Hello, it's Dr. Kent Holtorf with another episode of the Peptides Summit. Today we are honored to have Dr. Goel from Toronto. He's a biohacker and just really doing a lot of cutting edge things. And today he's going to be talking about biohacking, psychedelics, hyperbaric O2, and peptides for peak human performance. Dr. Goel is founder of Peak Human, so it's at peakhuman.ca, again in Canada. His goal is to get you 100 times what you are now. With advanced training in anti-aging, integrative, regenerative medicine, he advocates a healthy lifestyle, really, which everyone does, but it's that biohacking that makes it much easier and you get there much quicker. Centered around plant-based diet, of course, physical activity, and enhancing mental resilience. He was the main host partner for the Toronto Biohacking Summit in 2018 and brings with him extensive knowledge about a lot of things, but interesting also cannabinoids, psychedelics, and emerging science of psychedelics and peptides. So welcome, Dr. Goel. Thank you for taking the time. It's an honor, and you're doing a lot of great things.
Thank you so much, Ken, for having me here.
So tell me about what you're doing there. I know you're doing a lot. Very interested in this kind of merging field of using psychedelics and cannabinoids, like low dose for depression and other things. So tell me a little bit about that, if you would.
Yeah, to be honest, I really came out of this whole biohacking space, and a couple of years ago, I ran a summit here in Toronto with the Biohacker Summit folk from Finland. And basically the concept of biohacking means to be able to basically take charge of your own body by measuring it and understanding it and then experimenting on what's out there in the world. So generally it sits outside medicine, but I got really interested in this field. And then, cannabis, which is, really came outside of medicine at the beginning, and really medicine is now catching up to that. Same with psychedelics. People have been using psychedelics to expand their brain, and now we're finding so many other uses, like migraines and depression, anxiety, so on and so forth.
Nice. Yeah, because, with this whole biohacking, and you mentioned kind of outside of mainstream medicine, things are moving so fast now, and there's so much information. 20 years ago, trying to get information or write a book or whatever it is, you go to the library, try to find the journal, copy it. Now it's just so much coming out. It's exponential. It's just really who can gather that information, but there's so much information out there. But, studies have shown, Annals of Internal Medicine found most doctors are practicing 20 years behind what's available in the medical literature. And it takes on average a proven new therapy that, tons of studies take 17 years to adopt in the mainstream medicine on average, unless it's a new drug where they have sales force and, they're just pounding the doctors. But, so everything, is moving so slow in better medicine, but the so-called alternative or integrative space is moving so fast. And it's evidence-based. It's more evidence-based, I found, than standard medicine that's still using, what they learned in residency and, medical school.
Yeah, and that's why it's not fair to call this, alternative medicine or, complementary medicine or so on, because then it gets this kind of, I don't know.
Yeah, stigma. Oh, no study.
It's kind of non-evidence based and all that. But what biohacking is all about science. So biohacking, well, you're looking at actual numbers and science and data.
and you're drilling down more to actually, cellular mechanisms and, basically how the body works instead of, hey, let's lower cholesterol. We just feel lower cholesterol, where it's just kind of a little barbaric, where this is the more science we know, the more biohacking goes on.
And I think what that means is that there's no particular dogma. Like you might have a particular, I don't know, a form of alternative medicine which has this, okay, this is the way it's going to be. Like, we believe in this theory of how things work. But when you're looking at biohacking, you're just looking at whatever the science takes to that. If it's today, it's vegan diets. Tomorrow it could be keto diets. It doesn't really, there's no initial attachment to any outcome. All we're looking for is what is the science telling us, and we're willing to change with it.
And that's what, I love, like medical debates, right? Like say, here's the thing, everyone has their inherent bias from what you've read, what you've seen, but, just basic going back and forth, here's the studies on this. But problem is that's gone. Everyone it's so political and emotional. It's like, if you say something that's outside the dog, well, you're a quack, it's kind of like you're racist, then ends it ends the conversation. And so about, vested interest and bias, and you look at, levels of evidence. You got your randomized double-blind placebo-controlled study, meta-analysis, single blind, basically case studies, anecdotal, and below that are basically this by the WHO, World Health Organization, found that societal guidelines are the worst form of evidence. They're so far behind, they don't change because there's a big fight, When new studies come out, they don't adopt. Say, oh, my patients are good. My patients are fine. And I have an article on the National Academy of Hypothyroidism, NAH, and NAH hypothyroidism, National Academy of Hypothyroidism.org. But why doesn't my doctor know this? And goes through. There's lots of concerns in these journals that doctors aren't adopting new therapies because the system also doesn't allow them to. Even if they spend all the time researching all this stuff, their hospital, whatever, will go, you can't do that, And so they're put in a bad position. It doesn't do them any good to learn more and new stuff.
Yeah. And, luckily, Canada's been a bit of a pioneer in the whole cannabis space because, we've had the medical cannabis stream now for a good 10, 15 years. And now it's, it's become clinics, where we write prescriptions to licensed producers. That has been about already 4 or 5 years. So we've had a lot of ability that, there's been much more openness now. So I think there's already about 10% of the population has probably used cannabis. And
nice. So yeah, I know you use a lot of that. And then on the psychedelic realm, what can you tell me about that? Like what you use, what have you found it useful for? Like dosing of things?
Yeah, psychedelics. I mean, again, they said it's still in the gray zone in Canada. Like they're not. It's not an official thing that one can prescribe, but I can educate patients on how to use it and what the science is saying. So, generally, what's been in fashion is either microdosing. Something like 100 milligrams to 200 milligrams once every 3 days for a couple of months. And what people are I've just tried psychedelic mushrooms.
Okay. Yeah. Now, is there different? I don't know about all this. Is there different potencies? Like, how do you know, like which one to use, or different strains, or?
It's still very difficult in the psychedelic world. Yeah, there are in the psychedelic mushroom world to know what's more potent or other. But generally, if you just go with that type of 100 milligrams, 150 milligrams of a dried psychedelic mushroom, you should be fine. It's not going to cause an issue.
And then what would the normal dose be?
Oh, I mean, if one is going to a therapy session, if you take about usually about a gram, you'll start to.
That's like recreational use. They use about everything.
Well, I mean, I think that it's being used in therapeutic settings at bigger doses. So under the care of a therapist, this has been shown to help people get through some problems, that understand what's going on, what has happened in their life. Sometimes people see the same problem a different way. It's something that's very difficult to say.
And so is it like a lasting effect? And so people say they kind of like look at themselves from kind of the outside and say, I'm not doing this right or not doing that right, or that's what I think that's more with ayahuasca. Is it?
They're similar. They're
Ayahuasca.
still psychedelics. They're still similar, acting on similar receptors. So it's the 5-HT2A receptor. So this serotonin receptor specifically that the psilocybin or ayahuasca or DMT is acting on. And what that's doing is increasing the serotonin level, but it's giving a sense of interconnectedness, this feeling that you're connected to everyone else, to the nature and stuff like that. And at a higher dose, what ends up happening is what we call the default mode network starts to get suppressed. So whatever's underneath starts
Kind of a bell shape or inverse bell shape, whatever. Well, ecstasy.
Yeah, MDMA is the part of ecstasy, but MDMA is clearly being used for PTSD in trials right now. What we just don't know is, and this some of my concerns is that what are the long-term impacts of taking, MDMA on a regular basis? We just don't. I don't know that aspect, but
Yeah, the weather, I think at high dose is kind of the same thing. You start down regulating, or there's some toxicity here, but
probably could be downregulating serotonin because it's such a big dose of serotonin that's coming out. So receptors might be getting downregulated, but we don't see anything in the psychedelics like psilocybin, ayahuasca, or DMT of people getting any type of overdose or downregulation of those receptors. But you need to take these doses. The maximum you could be taking is once every 3 days, because otherwise you won't have an impact.
Gotcha. And then when do you see a difference, and what do you generally see, and how long do you do it? And
So let's come back to the microdosing. So if somebody who's taking a microdose, they may or may not feel that dose. Like it's very subtle. Like they might just be a little calmer. They might think, they might just feel a little bit sharper or something like that. But generally, they won't feel it. But it's what this research showed was that people who did microdosing after a few months, they did surveys before and after. They just found that their mood was better.
All right, so you're diving deep into peptides and longevity on this podcast, and we're right there with you. Integrative Peptides stands out, trusted by over 10,000 doctors to deliver real results for their patients. These premium peptides are your key to unlocking vitality, recovery, and a longer, stronger life. Visit integrativepeptides.com and use the code PODLIFE for 10% off your first order. Again, integrativepeptides.com. Use the code PODLIFE for 10% off. It's time to elevate your journey, starting now.
And other people don't notice, like, dude, I love you, man.
Not at the microdose level. But if one is taking in a treatment dose, like you're under a therapist, or you're doing with somebody who's there to support you and watch you, first it's important of we call the set and the setting, so that you have set a right intention. For the 1 week before, you set yourself that you're avoiding alcohol, you're avoiding trying to put yourself in a good space. You're not getting to fight with somebody. You're putting an intention of what do you want to get out of it. Even if in your mind you're putting forward, I'm kind of working on this issue of my relationship with my mother or something like that. And, you just put that in your mind. And when you actually do have the session, these things just tend to come up. That problem tends to come up.
Oh, interesting. So you're intentionally trying to solve a problem. I heard like with ayahuasca, if you drink alcohol, it doesn't really work, or and you found you use this for addiction as well.
Yeah, for sure. I have patients who are using it to get off, painkillers or alcohol, and they're taking more in the microdose dosage, and they're having a lot of success.
Gotcha. And you're kind of doing the same every 3 days. And how long till they start seeing benefit, and how long do you continue?
Yeah, it can be a long-term thing. I get this is these are microdosing. People are doing that for some time. I would suggest a couple of months, 3 months trial, and people are noticing after usually a month that they feel different, and they can increase to to 200-300 milligrams if they want.
And let's say for depression, do they notice like, oh my gosh, I'm no longer depressed, or just like, I don't feel depressed? Like, is it, kind of a slow, steady type of thing.
It's slow to say because what this is actually doing is helping you to see something a different way. We call this rewiring your brain. It's
Oh my God, you get brain that like crazy. We call the anti-Tony Robbins. You tell them this is what you can do. I'll give you 1,000 reasons why you can't do it. He keeps rewiring.
you just need rewiring because that's exactly it. Because you can tell a depressed person how to change the way of thinking, but it's very difficult.
But they feel they can't get out. They can't get out of that,
Yeah, and rumination.
For ruminate. So it's very interesting. Like, watch some of these documentaries on, some of these people have everything, like some of these celebrities, they have fame, fortune, everyone loves them. And they're so depressed, they want to like kill themselves. It's amazing. What shows depression, it has nothing to do with logic. Like, look at all this stuff I have. It's, what do you have to be depressed about? Well, that's depression. You don't have anything to be depressed about, or everyone can find something, but yeah. Look at it.
That there's a society unfortunately sets us up that so many of us are struggling with negative thoughts.
Yeah, and I think, would you say society, the way everything is now, makes everything worse? The COVID thing, everyone's stuck, but also just like even we didn't have computers. You'd send a letter, you'd wait a week for something to come back. Now it's like, or when you're in high school, you never know where are you in this pecking order, where, it's all vague. Now it's like, how many likes do you have? And everything's texting, instant response, instant gratification, stress. We got traffic, emails. It's like, we're just being overloaded constantly.
Yeah. I think that, I don't know if you've seen Social Dilemma on Netflix, but it's pretty impressive. Like how
I just saw part of it. I was just talking about it with my girlfriend's son about it. I'm like, damn. And I only saw part of it. It's like, they know more about you than you do. I heard they can tell if you're pregnant before you do by how your shopping changes.
Right. But it's very clear that it does cause, like, the use of social media causes depression, anxiety.
Yeah.
Okay, looking at everybody else.
And also, they were talking about news. If you look at certain news sites, they're going to feed you that same news. So it polarizes everyone, because this is all the news you see. This person else in. No wonder everyone's fighting, It's like,
that's what the political climate's about. This is what people are going down their own rabbit holes. And that's how people are getting radicalized.
Yeah. And they're just adamant because that's all they see. Yeah, it's scary. It's scary. We can go on by that. Like, on that, it's very political.
Yeah, psychedelics open your, basically rebreak, like, because what happens, the more we think some way, the roads get stronger and stronger, the paths. So what we want to do is make it that it's, again, like, wash over some of those roads, like those, so that way you can start new paths. And so by, again, suppressing the top part of your brain, the rational part that's always thinking, suppressing that allows, some new pathways to form. Basically, that's how. So it's not always going to be an antidepressant. It could be put in the wrong hands. If you go and take a psychedelic dose and then you're in a bad situation and you're having a fight with somebody, you're not doing.
Yeah, I've heard it's from the, experts. It's like context, right? You can't be in a bad mood or around bad people and, bad energy. And I always make an analogy with people. We see this with a lot of, chronic fatigue syndrome, Lyme patients. You can almost tell that they have this illness within a minute on the phone, right? And they get wired different. And I think of kind of like a feral cat. If you bring that feral cat in very soon after, it could be totally normal. But if you wait a month, there's almost no way you're going to get that cat to be comfortable, holding it like a regular cat. I'd like to see a study on a feral cat and give the feral cat see if you can rewire it.
Definitely are people giving cannabis to pets. I've definitely seen that.
Yeah. And then the psychedelics compared to cannabis, what's your thought? Like, can we actually use cannabis?
Really two separate types of medicines. Like, one is acting on endocannabinoid system, helps with balance the immune system and happiness. But they're working complete separate systems.
Yeah. And I think, the endocannabinoids, let's say we'll take out THC, but, it's so anti-inflammatory. the melanocortins and like alpha melanocyte stimulating hormone, amazing for like mast cell activation syndrome, but you got to inject that super short acting. So there's like melanotan, which thing is good or bad. It's basically melanotan 1 and 2, called the Barbie doll, whatever. You get tan, you increase libido, and you lose weight. But we found that tiny fragment, KPV, which is also absorbable orally, is great. It's such a great immune modulator, anti-inflammatory, mast cell inhibitor. So I think
The gut. Are you using a KPV for gut issues?
it actually absorbs too. So we're using it for mast cell. We haven't used it for a long time because we couldn't get it, but it's also coming out as available as oral. And we're finding, I want to do studies on actually showing the bioavailability, but we're finding the clinical outcome, like with mast cell, is very good. But also gut is great. And interesting with the gut, it's also, delta sleep inducing peptide, you use it for sleep, but the highest levels are in the gut. And it's very anti-inflammatory, when it lowers hypothalamic inflammation, which causes, diabetes and leptin resistance and hypothalamic pituitary dysfunctions. All the hormones are low. So it's kind of amazing new systems everyone's looking at.
And sorry, just one fish of DSIP. So how are you find that you can get that every single day? Like I've been giving it every day, but is it something that we should?
Yeah, I found, it kind of one of the ones that changed my life for sleep. It's not a sleep medication where you get sleepy. It kind of changes that whole sleep center. I found if you combine the delta sleep inducing peptide epitalon, so pineal hormone or pinelion, and then a growth hormone, either growth hormone secreted, growth hormone itself, or AOD, anti-obesity drug, which is a fragment of growth hormone. That combination seems to work very well. It takes a couple weeks more epigenetically, but I've been the worst sleeper. I had Lyme all my life that just messes your sleep up like crazy. And it's still not perfect, but it has helped so much because I would, everyone calls me a vampire. I get energy at midnight. And, if I wish the world was turned around, when I was in China, it was awesome because I was on US time, be up all night and just talk to people during the day, but that combo's helped a lot of people.
The epitalon, are you giving this all big doses at one time? Like, can you put this in IV or people take?
Yeah, when you look at the studies, they're basically done in big doses. They did like 1 week every 6 months, but we just do it smaller doses every day.
Yeah,
and we find that it works. And delta sleep also looks like it's orally bioavailable. And it's interesting. So generally, the smaller the peptide, the more likely it is absorbed. But there's certain ones that the conformation, if the amino acids, if it has enough hydrophobic, so lipid soluble amino acids that it tends to conform, it can actually be absorbed. So like, BPC 157 is not a tiny peptide. Well, it's tiny compared to proteins and things like that. But it is equal potent to injectable for systemic conditions. Like they did study on same colitis and Alzheimer's model that worked for both. Where people with joint pain, just give it orally, boom. And that's why we also like the, TB4, thymosin beta 4, immune modulator, thymic peptide, a lot of great studies on and modulating that immune system, but it's 42 amino acids. It doesn't absorb. But the 4 amino acid N-terminal absorbs whole and has the majority of all the effects in beta 4, but it doesn't stimulate mast cells, so that part was taken out. And there's another smaller fragment, nano fragment, that also is immune modulatory that should be available orally coming out too. So kind of interesting stuff when you kind of dig down into the dirt, right?
Yeah, that's quite exciting.
Yeah. But so what do you like for cognitive? I know you do you're obviously a lot of brain stuff, depression or cognition, dementia. What type of things do you
Yeah, pretty excited about. I've used a lot of cerebral lysin, which I'm giving in kind of a big, like 10 milligram dose IV. If the person can make it into the office, I'll try to do as often as they can get into the office, but usually it's something like once a week. we'll do at least 10 treatments. I've seen good results with patients with early dementia, and just people just want to have a edge at work.
And so cerebrolysin is basically, brain peptides, a mixture, which no one knows the exact composition, but we're actually testing with the mass spec time of flight. We're going to figure out exactly what's in there. But they made it here a biologic, so you can't get it IV or as injection anymore. But it is orally bioavailable because the peptides are small enough. Oh. And they've had the studies showing that orally, EEG changes, so they show that it works. So that's I know going to be out in a couple weeks or so.
Yeah, I'm pretty excited if you can get that. That's
So like 1 caps equal like 2 cc's.
It's very difficult. We have to get it shipped right from Austria, and it's not easy.
Yeah, and we used to get a lot of stuff from Europe, and I mean they're approved in in Europe and these other countries, but we had a patient who was FDA age or DEA age, and because you're on the list, you better stop getting stuff from Europe. That they're like, oh, yeah, we got to stop, even though, and people think something's FDA approved, that means it's proven and safe. It's like there's so much corruption in it, but hopefully there's no FDA. Just kidding, if there's anyone listening, but yeah, all these great chews are shown to be exceedingly safe, much safer than standard meds, and it's funny, my pharmacy attorney, we have so many FDA attorneys too, they say, yeah, if you find something that's totally safe and works, it's like it, you get taken away.
So I've also been using FGL at the same time, mixing it with the cerebrolysin through the IV, and doing some C-Lank and C-Max if the patient has, anxiety, things like that.
Can you talk a little bit about those?
Yeah, so I'm basically the FGL looks to be like neurogenesis, helps to increase neurogenesis of brain cells, neuron cells, and about 2 milligrams I'm putting into the IV with every treatment. And
so with that, you need a little higher doses, where a lot of peptides like are nano, basically micrograms.
Yeah,
rather than milligrams, it's 1,000 times more. So they tend to be more expensive because you need so much more.
Yeah, that's the problem with some of these. These are kind of a $100 type vials.
Yeah,
expensive. And I'm definitely adding in thymosin alpha into these for anybody who's got any type of brain concerns because of trying to reduce neuroinflammation and
yeah. And a nice study, thymosin beta for frag, reducing microglial activation. Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. So it's a lot of people, brain on fire. And it really is, especially these chronic infections. And we heard a little about C-Max and C-Lank. When do you like one or the other, or what line?
Yeah, I wouldn't. I think C-Lank I'm using more for the addiction. People have addiction issues, and C-Max more for the depression. But apart from that, no, I don't.
Yeah. I think I'll agree. Very similar, subtle differences. I think the C-Max a little more activating. People like take the either nasal or with it or a shot, and they'll go, I think a little clearer. Where C-Lank, I find people with like anxiety, it's a little more calming, helps deal with stress. I gave it to rats, which they do terrible things to rats, how long they can last, even with swimming until they drown type thing, or at least they think they're going to drown. And I find when I'm really stressed, I'm looking for the C-Lank, But so I like those. And C-Lank has a lot of also immune modulatory properties. There's some studies, showing to prevent viral infections like that.
What do you, just jumping there, you mentioned the frag with with thymosin beta. So what's the frag part? Is that an addition?
No, it's actually a piece. So if you look at thymosin beta 4, it has multiple domains that do different things.
Right.
And you'll have part of just, immune modulatory, some activate mast cells. One fragment works for hair. So the fragment that is available currently orally is the one that does the immune modulation, very anti-fibrotic. Great studies showing, reversing diabetic nephropathy, kidney damage, heart damage, traumatic brain injury, reverses, heart failure, post-infarct, but it takes away that part that stimulates mast cells. Now, if you give TB4 to a person with mast cell, usually they're better because of the upstream immune modulation. And, all these mast cell, experts, they're not direct mast cell inhibition, antihistamines. Yeah, that's part of it, but look upstream and you'll do so much better. And so it's also small, so it's only 4 amino acids. And so it crosses the blood-brain barrier, so we get a much better effect. Now, there's another fragment that actually works for hair. And by using the hair fragment, like you'll see the studies on TB4, you will inject or, put it topically probably because it's so big. But the fragment actually can get into the scalp.
What fragment is that? Just curious. So how does somebody who's trying to get this understand what the different fragments are?
Yeah. So so you basically got to dig down. So the hair, so the amine fragment is basically the first 4 amino acids. And then the hair is about 3/4 of the way in, another 4 amino acid. And then the nano fragment is another one that actually is located multiple places in the TB4 as a 3 amino acid. And actually there's also dipeptides, so 2 amino acids. It's amazing that they have all this immune modulatory effects. And you think, how could a 2 amino acid thing do that? But it doesn't. It also makes it through the enzymes. The enzymes don't break them down. And then so they'll show that, they'll do have studies, basically the 2 amino acids, the 3, the 4, and extend it. And then all of a sudden, like if you go too long, it stops, makes it not work. You can go backward. So it's interesting stuff.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah. Makes sense to me now.
Yeah. And let's see, you talk about, I know you mentioned substance abuse. You found some use with peptides and also the microdosing. You already talked about substance abuse.
The peptides, I guess, mentioning with C-Lank and some of the neural like FGL and CMAX and thymosin alpha. Also doing the vitamin C IV drips for that. Yeah, those seems to be what.
Gotcha. So it kind of that rewiring and I think just, we see work for depression, traumatic brain injury, post-traumatic stress, and anxiety. I think anytime you reduce that anxiety, because so many people with substance abuse, they're really using it as, self-medicating.
Yeah.
And you reduce that constant anxiety. It's huge. That's great. And what are the ones do you like? So you said you like thymosin alpha 1, BPC 157.
Yeah, definitely using BPC. I'm using a lot of AOD 9064 for weight loss. We're having a lot of success on that.
And can you explain that? What AOD?
Yes. Basically, it's AOD seems to be it's a fragment, I believe, of human growth hormone. So it seems to have, without the side effects of growth hormones, it works only, I think, the weight loss part, the fat loss.
It's called anti-obesity drug is what it came out as. And the studies actually looked pretty good, but they dropped it. They dropped from finishing the studies. It was in clinical trials. I don't know what happened because the studies are good. You look at like studies on like Neurontin on other drugs for nerve pain. Right. It was exactly like placebo. And then it dips down a little bit and they go, here you go. It helps, and all the side effects. But yeah, it doesn't increase IGF-1, but has a lot of healing effects and very safe. I haven't seen any side effects with it. And you can also put it into joints and things like that. Or like the AOD, BPC 157, and either TB4 or TB4 frag as our kind of standard cocktail for joint injections works really well.
You make the PRP?
Yeah, either PRP, stem cells, exosomes, or decellularized growth factors now. Ozone, I do like prolozone. I think it's, they all work, but I think putting in together, you might oxidize the peptides, but so we tend not to do those together. But or just even doing the peptides, but usually be with like a little PRP or exosomes or something like that.
Any of these growth factors, I know we can buy some of these growth factors, like epidermal growth factor. Can these things be added to a PRP? Would that have any benefit?
Yeah. Yeah, you can, add all stuff. Problem is, like, the growth factors tend to be very expensive. Like, if you try to, there's certain serums and things like that that you can buy from companies that combine different growth factors, and very similar to peptides, and in terms of turning genes on, signaling, epigenetic change, the basically what genes are turned off and turned on. And I know you do genetics, and the thing is, I love genetic tests, but your genetics are really about 20% of what's, you know of what your destiny is. Other 80% is how you could turn those on or turn them off depending on lifestyle, food, sleep, peptides, hormones. And like GHK is another one. So copper peptide, I forget exactly, it turns like on like 78 genes and turns off 43 or something like that. I mean, that's not the right number, but it's like amazing, so
And normally I know I've used it topically a lot, you know, for
yeah, yeah.
stuff, but
Yeah, it works great for skin. We can also do it in injectable, and it looks like oral will work as well. That's only a tripeptide. Um,
it has that bluish color, but it's fine if you're injecting. It doesn't burn or whatever. Injecting it like I use
yeah, no.
that.
In fact, yeah, and you have GHK on your body, and so usually it's 2 milligrams injection, a day or a couple times a week. But we'll do higher doses in the joint, and then orally, we're looking at how much is actually absorbed, or transdermally, how to get it through the skin, not just into the skin. And it looks like GHK by itself does not absorb, but if you have the copper already attached to it,
Yeah.
then much better absorption.
Right, the GHK copper. Yeah, that's how I think I've seen it coming.
Yeah. It's like also zinc thymulin is going to absorb much better than just thymulin. So if they tend to be positive charge, they tend to get in much, much better. And like AOD, what is it, like 167 to 191?
Yeah, right. Adding that. Yeah, I've seen.
And that actually absorbs orally. And the study showed that, where you wouldn't think based on the size, but it has a lot of positively charged amino acids and the hydrophobic or lipophilic amino acids. So it absorbs very well. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And when you do AOD, like for weight loss, what else do you like? The mitochondrial boosting peptides along with that?
Yeah, the only ones I'm using is I've used MOTS, which I'm telling patients to do on a weekly basis. And then I'm just testing out the SS31 on a few patients. It is.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. Yeah. So SS31, if you talk about SS31?
Well, as far as I was doing some reading, it looks like it seems to be improving mitochondrial efficiency and improving the energy production of the cells. I think the study showed that in mice, the mice that were given SS31 the older mice became younger, I think after a couple of months.
Yeah.
And I believe also there were some human studies that also showed some improvement in elderly.
Yeah. And when you look at all these studies on aging and age-related illnesses, they have a number of things in common. Immune dysfunction, your thymus goes, you get that poor, Th1, Treg, so you can't fight infections, can't fight cancer, but the Th2, so obviously all this inflammation, autoimmunity, and then also mitochondrial dysfunction is huge. And so the cells actually don't have enough energy to even like detox, to kick out heavy metals. They don't have enough energy to die when they're supposed to. So the cell needs energy, what's called apoptosis. So in the cells have a inherent mechanism of when they get senescent and they don't work very well, they self-destruct, or they should, but they don't have enough energy to. So all of a sudden you add the energy, now they can die. And, it's called autophagy, where you're getting rid of all the old bad cells, and which there's a lot of, kind of people promoting, I agree, is you want to do some things for autophagy and get rid of those old cells first, and then start promoting the health. Because you don't want to promote, make a senescent cell that's all crazy, especially like mitochondria, has a lot of inflammation and things like, so the TB4 frag, BPC, so the mitochondria, actually a linea, which is a anti-parasitic, antiviral, anti-cancer. Actually, that's not in the literature. It's not approved for that, but it's amazing substance. Metformin, resveratrol, all the bioflavonoids are great at autophagy as well. Intermittent fasting does that as well. So you get rid of the bad cells before you you don't want to stimulate all the cells. You want to get rid of the bad ones first.
What's your experience with like fasting mimicking diet?
You know, I don't promote much diet because I want to be a hypocrite because I eat like crap. and I tried the fasting mimicking diet and I lost like 10 pounds but then I gained 15 back. So, and I'm also with exercise, I'm religiously exercise. That's my passion every 4 months for 8 minutes, rain or shine. So I don't want to be a hypocrite. So I don't talk. There's so many people that can tell you more about, what to do, exercise and stuff. And
I think the way you explained about the autophagy, that's where it really is now. That's so exciting. The science now, senescence, and how to help get rid of those cells that are in the senescence.
Yeah. And I mean, it's amazing. You look at people, I have friends in their 80s that it's where they're 40, and other people who are 60 and they're like, what I remember thinking in high school, someone's 60, that's nursing. And, I'm 56. I'm like, damn, I'm almost 60. And, you think about whatever with the Simpsons, Mr. Burns, or whatever, and just hunched over and people are like that. And it's such a difference. Like, do you want to live longer if you're in a nursing home and, don't have your faculties and can barely do anything? I wouldn't, So I think that's the big thing, the health span and vitality span versus lifespan. And you look at the money spent in people's, last year or two of life is huge. We spend all this money to keep them alive, but they're already, our heart's failing and, they got dementia, like you remember anything, and neuropathy and diabetes. And, that's like, when I got heart failure, it's just from Lyme, I'm like, I can't live like I'm not going to go on where I, couldn't stand up and I would walk 1 mile an hour. I remember, going around the world and trying to catch my plane, just sweating, trying to make the plane at 1 mile an hour with my head bent down like a bowl, and then pulling my suitcase in the snow and getting on a subway in New York like this, and it's crowded. I think someone's going to just, hit me at the back of the head because like how annoying. But yeah, like stuff like that. And some people with heart failure, and so like the peptides changed my life, reversed the heart failure. And studies show that with, TB4 and BPC, certainly stem cells and exosomes helped, ozone. I mean, there's a lot of things that work, and, peptides one part of them, it's a nice tool to have in your toolbox.
Yeah, it's pretty exciting. I think I'm so happy that you're doing this summit because this is really the future of medicine. And and so many people, they hear about peptides, and, you can give people studies and, even doctors are not going to, okay, they want to hear what doctors are doing, and what you're finding that works, because I'm telling you, like, there'll be a study that comes out and shows, X treatment is so great. If it doesn't work, if I use it, like, wait a minute, the studies are showing it's wonderful. Like, I haven't seen any benefit. Or sometimes it's the first person that works on, but then no one else have had. Or it's like giving T2, basically the thyroid, there's T4, T3, there's also T2, which stimulates mitochondrial function. And the studies show they're like, oh my gosh, this would be great for weight loss. And there are some people it works amazing. They're like, this stuff is amazing, but the majority of people we found it didn't work. It's safe, so it's to try, but it's probably 15% of people notice a difference. And there's certainly not enough T2 and like armor and those things. So you need, like, we're doing like probably 600 to 800 micrograms a day of it. I mean, no side effects, but I tell people try it for a month, and if it works, great. If it doesn't, no worries. But for people it works on, it's like
it's amazing. But then another mitochondrial booster. I think it's the same with everything. The other mitochondrial booster, some people are, oh my God, I feel like Superman. I think all the peptides, I think really everything's like that, You can look at, why I think that's the problem. People go to the internet and, oh my God, I got cured me with this herb, but try it on a bunch of people that doesn't work. And so I love patients that go to the internet and look for everything. If a doctor says, stop reading the internet, run. But just bring it back and we'll talk about it, and a lot of things just work on a few people, but we got to play, one percentages. You want things that work for majority of people, are safe, effective and, in cost, and so you try to weigh all those things, and which is like, patient, well, my doctor says this, well, you ask 3 doctors, you get 4 different opinions, but then we found the less a doctor knows, the more adamant they are they're right. I think you've probably found when you get in this biohacking and dig deep in all this stuff, you realize how little we know, and
That's the thing. I still think it's still quite a bit of an art. I'd like it to be a bit more. Unfortunately, the blood tests we have, unfortunately, don't provide enough guidance. Okay, which peptide work, which person. Some of it's a bit of a
and that's why tell doctors that the labs are a piece of information, and I love getting a ton of labs. Like we usually have 35 for the sickest patients, but they've been everywhere. And and you look at the chart, they get CBCs and chem panels, and the doctor can't find anything. Well, if you don't look, and you should, we know what's going to be wrong, but also our job is convince the patient, and also convince the patient's doctor that, hey, you're in the right spot. Here's what's going on. But, any one test, it could be a lab error, it could be, and there's no perfect test. And I love to run a lot of great tests, but, costs, and a lot of tests are great in research because they're right there and doing it. But once they try to commercialize them, you got a tech drawing it, it sits out, And we sent our internet guy just pretty basic lab. Just he went to Quest and then LabCorp and Quest. One was right on top of each other. Didn't need or anything, just went one to the other. One showed he was diabetic. The other one showed his blood sugar was awesome. Okay, fine. Yeah. And one insulin was sky high, the other one was low. I mean, these are just standard labs. So you got to take everything with a grain of salt. Or I don't understand why doctors, they order a lab and it's abnormal and they go, oh, it's a false positive. Well, why did you run the lab if you're not going to do anything about it, So, anyways, a couple of kids. So what labs do you like to get?
Yeah, I mean, I tend to get I'm looking at the hormones, free testosterone, estradiol, DHEA. But I'm also looking at HSCRP, lipoprotein, LPPL-A2.
So do you looking for, prevention, heart disease, and
looking for signs of inflammation,
Yeah, and I think, the whole cholesterol theory of heart disease, I think, is dead. I mean, there's so many studies, inflammation is huge. Yeah. And a lot of patients, for instance, Lyme patients have so much inflammation, but their CRP is normal, And also we found if some people check SED rates, if that's low CRP, often they have coagulation defect, immune activation of coagulation, and give them a little heparin. Like they'll line the infection will cause the body to line the vessels with fibrin, not a clot, but now it's lining it. So oxygen usually takes 2 seconds to get into the cell. Now it takes up to 2 minutes. And waste particles can't get out, nutrients can't get in, hormones, peptides. Like if things don't work, it's something to really look at. And you can do a little kind of parlor trick. It's not perfect because it depends on also patient in their effort. But normally if you have someone breathe out all their air, have a pulse ox on, and then hold their breath. And so normally, the oxygen from the lungs, basically goes into the bloodstream and then, through the heart, into the cells and is utilized. So you look at the pulse ox, that will go down as you shut off the oxygen. But if they have a coagulation defect, it barely goes down. So if someone like holds their breath, makes good effort, it goes from 97, 98 down to 80s, some people 70s. That's actually the the oxygen's getting into the tissues. But if it doesn't, it's a marker for coagulation defect. So when you clear that up and all of a sudden the treatments that didn't work before now start working.
So it's some heparin, and is that how would you do that?
Yeah. Yeah. So usually it's very safer than aspirin because it's super low dose. And oh my gosh, you're on blood thinner. It's if you talk to hematologists, they'll say, why are you giving that? It's homeopathic dosing. But also the enzymes like lumbar kinase are the best, nattokinase. But yeah, so when I tell people I got good news and bad news, the bad news is you got a coagulation defect. The good news is you got a coagulation defect. We can treat it. But so there's a panel we do for that. But nice. So I love all the stuff that you're doing. Anything else you're kind of excited about?
I'm excited about this. Well, everything about biohacking is about measurement. So I have this ring these days that's called the Aura Ring. It's really cool. It basically checks your heart rate variability. It's a really interesting measurement because basic can tell you the stress that your system is under. So you'll notice if you have even 1 or 2 drinks the night before that your heart rate variability will go down during the night.
Can you explain heart rate variability and why?
Heart rate variability is the variation in your heartbeat. And when you're relaxed and your parasympathetic system is working well, there is a very good variation between beat to beat. And when someone's stressed, again, it's like imagine it's very stiff. Your heart rate becomes very stiff, so there's less variation. So
yeah,
the more variable.
But that actually measures that.
Yeah, so it's pretty awesome. And so you're really competing against yourself. It's not about checking with somebody else. You can see day to day. If you're overtraining, you'll notice that your heart rate variability might take a day or 2 to come back to normal.
Wow. And we've seen more and more of these athletes, and weekend warriors, and they've got to finish this marathon, and all of a sudden they crash.
Yeah,
and they've got chronic fatigue syndrome, and and their immune system shot, and that's very interesting. And because I think someone bought me the watch or whatever, I've never worn it, but that sounds interesting. What does it cost?
It's about $400 US Aura Ring. It's OURARING, Aura Ring, and NBA just come out. I think they've made it their official.
Wow,
they want all the players to use now, so it's pretty cool.
I'll have to check it out. Yeah,
and that's pretty much.
I think more and more we're also going to be getting into that, measurement, individual measurements like that, and you can monitor so I think people really need to take an active role in their healthcare because, just going for the checkup with their doctor, they find nothing,
Yeah, I think we need to start, I think doctors, because there's no way we can know everything. All we can do is guide the patient now. And just like, the iPhone allows people to take movies on their own, technology's allowed people to take charge of their own health, and the tools are there now. But we can probably provide guidance, but there's no way we can understand it all ourselves. And so patients have to do it themselves. They need to go out there, and the information is out there now.
Yeah. And I find too, I think it goes kind of back, we'll kind of circle back to the beginning, and that somewhat seems to sum it up a little bit, that I think somebody when they try to take an active role in their health care, it's so confusing because you read all the stuff on the internet says this is good, this is bad. The official stance is this, which is usually wrong, but those are the sites now that come up. Google suppressing, any alternative, facts, or, it doesn't matter how many references you have. If you have a couple buzzwords, bioidentical, integrative, alternative, it's like you get penalized and you don't come up. And so people see one thing and you tell them well, I read this and this, well, here's 200 studies showing that that's incorrect. But that's the stance of, the Endocrine Society or the Menopause Society. So you can see this adds to their anxiety. So a lot of people, or let's say at a party, well, I'm so sick, I got this and that. And then I go, well, you should consider this and this. Well, my doctor said I don't have it. Well, okay, how's that working for you? And they're scared to make a decision, because they're just bombarded with, basically conflicting information. So it's difficult.
Yeah, I don't envy. I think it's quite difficult to navigate. And so we can only be a guidance to people to help them navigate this. It's very difficult.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, great. It looks like you're doing some great work and on the cutting edge. And I don't know if you're maybe the second person from Canada we heard you, but yeah, we're getting so many restrictions here on all our stuff. The FDA is trying to shut down everything, but I think big pharma. Right. Awesome. Yeah. Keep up your work. Thank you for taking the time and sharing your knowledge and experience. I think it's going to be really helpful for all the viewers.
Thank you so much, Ken. It was really
great. Thanks a lot.
Okay.
Bye.
Thanks for joining us on the Peptides and Longevity podcast. If you enjoyed today's episode, don't forget to subscribe, share, and leave a review. It helps us reach more listeners passionate about optimizing their health. For more insights, resources, and updates, visit our website at www.holtorfmed.com. Together, let's embrace a future of health and vitality. Until next time, stay inspired and keep thriving.